Welcome to another episode of the Wood Couture podcast. Today I have the absolute pleasure to welcome to the show the one and only Ryan D. Martin, the Vice President of Design and Hospitality at Leo A Daly International. So, welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So, for those friends that do not know Ryan, it's actually, first of all, he was in the military. He was Marines, and which is something we really appreciated for the work, for serving his country, but saving all of us. And secondly, he's a veteran in hospitality, really an experienced gentleman, work in multiple countries and a true specialist in hospitality architecture. So we want to know all about it. So Ryan, the curiosity is very simple. Where it all started for you?
I would say, you mentioned my time in the Marine Corps, and I think that's when I knew that architecture was going to be my passion and what I fell in love with. I think early on, I knew that I liked to create things, whether with my hands or with my mind. Sometimes take things apart and destroy things, and then put them back together. And I didn't really know how to channel that enthusiasm and that creative passion. And towards the end of my time in the Marine Corps, I had a mentor who put me on to Michelangelo and said, "Hey, this guy did a lot of different things. Some of it was military, some of it was sculpting, painting, so on. You should have a look at it." So I had a long deployment where I was gone to Japan for about 7.5 months, and so I dug in and studied about his life, and then I thought, yeah, I'm going to give this a go. And so I got out of the Marine Corps and went straight to university. And that's when my love affair with architecture, my bitter and challenging love affair with architecture began.
Do you do you still bring your learnings from the Marine Corps into your day job? Is that something that have helped you a lot in your day profession?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was talking with my team yesterday. We were on the road, and we had a great interview with potential clients, and went incredibly well. And at the same time, we have daily challenges on our other projects. And I just kind of mentioned to them, I made a joke. I said, the Marine Corps was great training for being an architect and designer, because the tenacity that is required, the stick-to-itiveness, the never quitting, the endless commitment to endeavoring for a cause, is something that is scalable. And so, while I was never, I'll say, like, in a major conflict, that's something that they instill in you when you go through Marine Corps training, boot camp, and they just say, like, there's no turning back, there's no giving up. And so when I approach my projects that way, sometimes people are like, "Man, I mean, he's we're not there, but we know he's never going to give up." So I would say, yeah, I mean that, and also I would say, that married with just we called it esprit de corps, right? So the pride in belonging to a group. And I kind of care and endear myself with my team to the point that I'm like, it's not just like a office job culture thing. Like, I need you to be in this with me. I need you to care about it as much as me, and I want you to. And I want you to have that passion. I know it's not life or death, but it's incredibly important. And so that tenacity has served me well. But thinking of my projects like a battle is not necessarily the best approach. So it's kind of a labor of love, and yeah, I think there's lots of pieces that former part of my life that prepared me.
I love the narrative that is often found on the public domain. Whether it's your LinkedIn profile, your company, or any places where you participate as a speaker, and they describe you as a professional that emphasizes design, aesthetics, and operational functionality to create
Mhm.
memorable experiences. Tell me a bit more about your approach.
Yeah, I think early on, I learned a lot about the importance of the inner workings of things. I mean, you talk about the Marine Corps narrative, right? So all my weapon systems, I had to take them apart and put them back together. There wasn't a bunch of computers. It was machine guns that you take them apart and put them back together. They either work or they don't, right? So you have to understand the inside of the thing, and the outside thing, and you understand the beauty of the function, and you get past the fact that it's a weapon, right? But I mean, a sword is even simpler, but we're not talking about swords. So the back of house and the front of house of a hospitality project was something that was impressive on me, as it can be a beautiful resort, right? Beautiful hotel. People can love it for its architectural and splendor, but spectacle. But if it doesn't function, and if the systems don't work, and the staff is unhappy because they can't get to where they need to go and do what they need to do, doesn't function like a well-oiled machine, then you've got half of what you need. So I care deeply about the inner workings and the back of house, and having a building function well for an owner and operator, as much as I care about the guest experience and the front facing side of things. I mean, and so that balance is where I think we find a lot of that. I don't want to use the word turmoil, but a lot of the challenges and a lot of the give and take, because depending on the site, depending on the context, depending on the business model, there's always those things that we have to kind of iterate on. Is the room too big? Is it too small? Is it facing the wrong way? Is the spa too big, too small? Meeting space too much, too little? Kitchen. So I think sort of inside and outside, and I'll give you a different analogy. Instead of it being a weapon or machine gun or whatever, I kind of think of it as a human body, right? So it can be beautiful on the outside, but if the insides and the guts, so to speak, aren't working, or the bones, if the bones aren't working for us, then we got bigger problems. And it needs to be beautiful on the inside now, or functional to some degree. So it's that also, I think, is scalable depending on the product type, whether it's 3, 4, 5-star or beyond. And that's kind of where I find myself, and it's a challenging but very fulfilling place to be, I think.
From the way you were designing hotels about 3, 4 years ago, and then what has happened in the last 2 years, are you tackling your project in a different manner, or you stick to what you've always been doing?
Well, so definitely in a different manner. I think the pandemic was a disruptor for the way people move to places and move through places. I think some of the social sensitivities or germ issues are sort of eviscerating. I think people are becoming comfortable again. But I think operationally, on the service side, there's still things, people don't want to wear a mask maybe, but they would like their server to, which I totally get both sides. And I think there's, an increased or heightened sensitivity to cleanliness. I think both, again, guest facing side, back of house side, people started to really ask themselves, and we've written some articles about, how clean is what's happening on the back of house, even though the front of house appears clean, right? So operationally, there was some good conversation. And then I think the other big disruptor was supply chain. I think usually, or pre-pandemic, the issue was, can we get what we want in a reasonable amount of time for a reasonable cost, right? I mean, that's kind of where you start. Now it's, can we get anything we like in a reasonable amount of time, anything we like at all that looks like what we want in a reasonable amount of time, and is it going to bust the budget? So, that's kind of a bizarre place to be. And so I don't want to say we're designing with our hand tied behind our back, but when you pile on something like labor shortages or the battle for talent, we all want the best and brightest and most talented people on our teams or in our studios, whether it's coming out of school or whether it's 10 years in the industry, or if you want to hire a good partner, and they're just not out there. Pardon me. So if those people and those things are the world that we're faced with now, we have to approach every project with a different sort of posture and say, okay, this like, if they're children, this little child deserves this much attention, and this baby over here needs more attention. And so it's just very interesting. I tell people all the time that it's a wonderful problem that we have, or a wonderful challenge, because we have perspective now. I'll add that as the last little piece for post-pandemic, if you want to call that the era that we're in, if we can say that. When there's a conflict like we have in Ukraine, it's real easy for me to put myself in the correct frame of mind and say how wonderful it is to be in this air-conditioned office with this beautiful view. And my biggest problems are not safety and security and staying alive. They're just solving these problems in, you know, built form, conceptual form, human interaction form. So it's a very different time than it was 3 years ago for a lot of reasons. But I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this, and that's my perspective here in Dallas, Texas. I'm sure that other people could add a few other layers to it.
Sure. And in terms of sustainability, has the hospitality industry done enough to educate clients that that has to be part of the briefing that needs to come with to firms like yourself, or do you find they're still long way away from achieving some sort of understanding?
Yeah, I was hoping you'd ask that. I'm really glad you did. I think it's kind of funny. I got, and I don't know if it's okay to share any of these organizational names or not, but so I got a little bit involved with Fitwell before the pandemic, and I was looking at, you know, how Fitwell as an ambassador was engaged in looking at the environment that people are in and the health of the people more than just the building. So that's a piece that was very interesting. Became very important during the pandemic. My building that I'm in now is a Fitwell certified building. We designed our office here, and you know, we're very happy. But prior to that, there was a lot of energy and enthusiasm about LEED and sustainability, and people definitely wanted to, you know, fold that into their project and their process. But where we see ourselves now, coming out of the pandemic, after having been to ULI in Chicago recently, and seeing the energy that is being built around ESG is really encouraging. So sustainability was a thing, Fitwell was a thing, but I think ESG has the potential to be global. I don't think it is. I know it is. I've got clients that blow me away when they're saying things like, "Hey, we just made $100 million commitment to a global ESG impact fund," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, well, we need to fold that into our project, you know. And we're already doing things that are environmentally conscious, and we're already doing things that are sustainable, but there's so many more layers to it. And to have clients leading the way in the hospitality industry, I've seen at least 5 articles this week already on major outlets about ESG is coming, it's coming, it's coming. And so I hope that our country, the US specifically, doesn't get overly wrapped up in the litigation pieces of it and sort of try to mandate or dictate it. I think ESG came out of Europe and all the countries because they chose to do it for the right reasons, rather than creating policies and creating like red tape, right? So I'm very encouraged about where sustainability is headed in the hospitality industry. To answer your question, I hope it sticks, because I know that it is not a part of our normal or normative process over the past, I'll say, at least my 2 decades, if not the last 50 years, because the hospitality industry is maybe 70 years old in the US when we talk about, you know, roadside motels and how all that came about. So I think there's a tremendous upside, but then there's also going to be the people who just, you know, totally scoff at it, pay no mind to it. And I think travelers will start to perceive that and see that and choose based on that. So yeah, I mean, I would tell you if I didn't think it was going to stay. I think it's coming, and then, you know, the jury's still out about whether it's here to stay. But I think the industry will be definitely better for having engaged or leaned into ESG. I don't know that LEED or Fitwell suited the hospitality industry, but I think ESG definitely does. And so, you know, we're encouraged by it. I'm encouraged by it, but we're just getting going, you know.
It's quite interesting because over the last 40 to 50 episodes, and one of the recurring comments is the fact that whether it's architecture, building architecture, interior architecture, you know, you guys are artists, you create experiences, and then you present it to clients. And for some reasons, there's always somebody on that side that want to value engineer, you know, things. Let's call it things rather than specifics. And my question is this still happening nowadays? The value engineering of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think I try to call it like a cost analysis and value cost analysis, and because I hate to bring engineer into it, you know, and because we're not engineering, we're just cost cutting, and I think we start. I'll flip that on its head and say that we kind of start where we spend the money where the guest perceives it. Is sort of our position, right? So if we spend the money, whether it's the lobby arrival and the check-in, and the a lot of it around the guest rooms and the spa and the pool, and if the building gets taller or we get towards the edges of the property, maybe some of the details start to fade away and the materials get a little simpler, and where you can't touch it, can't feel it, can't see it. But when it gets to a specific material choice or a specific design direction where I come in, I just try to present the options from what's the best choice for the project. And if we're going to have a couple of superstars, let's decide what our superstar or our big shining moment is. Let's stick to that, and then let's see what we can do to have the greatest impact for the guest experience, greatest impact for, I don't know, call it revenue generation. Because if I can explain that this this wall covering or this floor tile or this architectural stone element, they're going to touch it and feel it, and they're going to have a memorable experience, and it's going to impact their soul. Maybe that all is important, but if we can also capture all the rainwater that we need for 50% of the year of the project, and it's free, it's falling from heaven, then we should do that. So, I mean, and we do a study saying that pays for itself, over 5-10 years, and it makes you a good steward of the earth. And then, the time you spend on infrastructure, the time you spend on drawing coordination, those behind the scenes things are important, right? And so we try to tell them, like, let's tell that story about our property. Let's tell that story about our resort. It's not a card hanging on the bathroom door that says, don't wash your towels for a day, or we won't change your bed sheets. This is bigger. This is, we put the right shading devices over our windows so that we are not having the same heat gain in the daytime. And that load or demand on energy, again, over the life cycle cost analysis of the project, is a better citizen of the earth. And that's got to feel good, and it's got to mean something. So if we can say that on, I'll just say, a resort in the Caribbean, if we can say we did that, we did hydroponic farming, we did reverse osmosis water treatment plant, we did a solar array. If there's guests that are into that, let's walk them around and show them, like, how amazing is it that this vacation resort, time to just hang out and chill out, is giving back to the context. But if at the same time, if they don't care and they just want to play in the pool and walk on the beach and have a cocktail, like, do that too. But so I think we make those offerings, and we try to tell that story, and we try to bring a client along until they just go, like you said, that one person goes, I love it, and what you're saying is wonderful, but we can't do it. And then we go, okay, well, maybe the next one. And then they go, yeah, we had 2 more projects after this one. Bring it up earlier, and we're going to try and do it better on the next one. So we don't give up. I think that was the tendency, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, me not giving up. But when it came up with LEED or Fitwell, there was a lot of folks that just said, sorry, I had a message there, but a lot of people say, oh, that's just not for us. We don't want a plaque on the building. We know the government's never going to pay us back for what we're doing here and there. We don't have the time for all these scorecards and sheets and so on. But this ESG movement, there's a lot of pieces to it, and it feels right, and it seems like it's a better position long term for, like, the story of humanity. If I'm not being overly, like, emotional, and so there's a better sort of there's a more engaging dialogue, I think, is the way that I would answer that, if that was the longest answer ever. But yeah, we want to have that conversation, and the conversation, I think, is scalable. If it's a 3-star hotel, near an airport or in a business district, ESG is going to be a small sort of conversation for them. But if it's a 1,500 key, convention center hotel somewhere, it's a much bigger story. That's got a different pull on the environment and on society. So yeah, we just scale the conversation up or down, and that's something we're figuring out, is how to have that conversation, because different cultures, different operators, different owners, they see things very differently throughout the industry. 6 star or I'll just say beyond 5 star super luxe, they may not care or they may care deeply. We kind of have to talk about them.
Interesting. Um, you mentioned very early in the conversation, you mentioned the word supply chain. And
Mhm.
I'm hearing from colleagues around the world that uh, everywhere, that basically FF&E is probably the biggest cause of project delay. Why is that?
Well, the best example I was able to hear was that where we wanted to have things made, say that we couldn't get exactly what we wanted, so we had someone make something similar. We all know this happens. So, so if we got it made in a place that had a certain level of quality that was similar, um, that place was probably at capacity. The first place that we all wanted to buy it from was already at capacity. So then there became a third place, third country, third part of the world, and they're now at capacity 2 years ago. And so now we're down to the fourth tier. So quality becomes an issue, logistics becomes an issue, and it's the relationships and the level of trust. I think based on touching and feeling and sitting in it, being able to commit millions of dollars to chairs arriving. Let's just say chairs that aren't too heavy or that don't fall apart or that don't scratch too much or that the cushion is right. I mean, there's a huge commitment, an emotional commitment again with millions of dollars. And when butts hit the seats or arms hit the side, is it too short, too high? And once you've got it, once it's made its journey to you, after you've gone through 4 different places to find it, you find it and it gets there. If anything's wrong, it kind of doesn't matter because you're trying to meet your grand opening and your deadline, and it's like, well, crap, how do we fix this? Do we cut the legs? Do we get a new cushion? Because there's no sending it back right now. I don't think. If you got a shipping container that's sitting off the coast and you've been waiting on it for 3 months, then it gets through customs. You get it out of customs and it arrives and it's the wrong color of cognac brown or orange. You're kind of stuck with it, and especially if you're on an somewhat some remote location. So I think it's exacerbated. It's the manufacturer demand, the labor shortage. Obviously, I hate using the same taglines, but if these people are at capacity and they don't have the staff or the skilled labor or trades, then they can't get the material that they need to make it. And then there's again shortages on people transporting these goods, shortages for people working in the customs facility, letting them in. So it's kind of this mega ripple. And you didn't ask me this, but I'll tell you, my position in the first time in my career is to kind of just say, let's all just take a deep breath. Let's say maybe this little bit of time and these challenges gives us a moment to make our projects better, or think about a few things differently, or refine some of the selections, right? And so I'm kind of trying to get past the sky's falling, nothing's going to be here on time, everything's too expensive, we have to open because we need to regain all the capital that we didn't get during the pandemic. I'm just kind of like, that's not the way design is supposed to be. We're supposed to take our time and care and be purposeful and methodical and thoughtful. And I kind of think, and I don't think my clients are going to love all this, but I'm kind of trying to just go through the process, right? And see, to your first question, see what the process is now, right? Because it's very different. There's a lot of different external factors, and so we're looking at how we practice architecture in 2022 and design, and our business model is different than it was 3 years ago. Offices that are half full is a thing. So yeah, it's a big ripple effect. Supply chain affects everything. And I never, I don't, people really didn't think about it before the pandemic. So again, the pandemic has been a disruptor, but it's also been an educator, because you have to know more than you knew before. A lot of people weren't thinking about the truck drivers and the people on ships and the shipping containers and air freight and all these things. So it's kind of wild. I mean, we've got clients with planes that are like, let's just rip all the seats out my plane and we'll put all the product for the grand opening on the plane, and it's kind of like, oh, what what are you talking about? But then at the same time, you're like, can we do that? Because if we can, that's a brilliant idea and it works, you know? And so everybody's just having to think, or having to, or getting the chance to think very alternatively, very differently. A lot of the rules of thumb of the previous decades are sort of being challenged, and I think that's good.
So it's time for a change. I think that's the message.
I mean, in one way or another.
Somehow, let's say. And
Yeah.
look, looking at the future, what do you see the two big things for hospitality architecture and design in the next few years coming up, being potentially on the horizon?
Well, I think I've seen this term revenge travel, where people are making up for lost time, and I think I think I'm pretty well traveled. Been quite a few places, and people have seen all the shows that there are to see on every Netflix and Prime and everything. And I think there's a ton of pent up demand, and I think people realize that they might have been missing out on a huge world, right? So you had all the drive-to markets that people were visiting when they were comfortable coming out of their house. They could drive a couple hours to visit something, but you mentioned all the things that are going on in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, and I think people are becoming more courageous, more ambitious, more willing to travel the world again, like they did in the 30s and 40s and 50s. And but now you don't have to jump on a steamship or get dressed up to jump on a plane. You can decide to take your kid to Dubai for the weekend, jump on Emirates nonstop or Etihad or whatever, and you're there, and you're in this amazing city that is halfway around the world. I think people I would call it extreme getaway. I mean, and that's not a revolutionary term, but getting my wife to go to Thailand is something that I've been working on for the entire time we've been married. Right? I've never been. I want to go, and I'm like, why would we go to Hawaii again? Hawaii is a beautiful place. I love it. I live there. You've been there 2 or 3 times. Can we please just go somewhere far and weird and different? Like, throw a dart at the map. Throw a dart at the map. So I guess that would be my thing. It's like, stay in the place you never thought you'd stay. Go to the place you never even heard of or dreamed of, because staying at home for 2 years was awful. And I traveled for business. I was very fortunate to travel for business. It wasn't easy, but when people can get on a plane again, like we are with no mask, get on a plane again without a test, wear your shorts and flip flops, your sweats, whatever, and just go. Spend the money, go see the world. I think I would call it revenge destination travel instead of just revenge travel. But I think people are more courageous, more ambitious, more willing to go far and wide. And so then when they get there, I mean, the place that they're going has to be has to change their life. And so that's where we come in. Hopefully the resorts that we're doing, because there's so much product coming online, you mentioned it, they have to be exceptional. And so that trend is receiving a guest that is their first time in the luxury segment, or a guest that it's their 50th time. I think people's expectations are super high, and they want as much bang for their buck. So I would call it the perfect storm, but a beautiful sort of opportunity. And then I think there's also like a super other end of the spectrum, super simplified piece of this spectrum, where there's people that just want, like, I'll use like a Moxie hotel in like a city like Manhattan or something. People that just want a really cool, really simple hotel for one night. Needs to be kind of fun, needs to be clean, needs to have a little bit of fitness, place to put their bags down, not trying to be a showstopper. So I think we have these extreme ends of the spectrum that are both very relevant and very important. And then, of course, there's all the outliers. But I guess the things that I'm most excited about and the trends that I'm excited about are the disruptors, the anomalies, the fact that there's not just a one brand, one method, one tried and true, like, this is the way you do a 4-star, this is the way you do a 5-star. So I love the fact that I have clients that say to me things like, yes, we're on the ocean, but forget about the ocean. Like, that happened to me 18 months ago, and I was like, oh, really? Okay. And so we're saving an entire jungle. We're purposely placing buildings in the jungle. And I'm like, oh boy, like this is not going to be easy, but what a great idea. And you talk about sustainability and ESG, the place that we're doing this has no luxury product to speak of. So we're going from no luxury product to the hyper sustainable, immersed in nature, like it's unbelievable. And then we still have very normal projects that are historic renovations, repositionings, hotels that are hundreds of years or over 100 years old, where people have an expectation, and we have to meet that bar, and then we get the opportunity to try to raise it. So I'm most excited about these extreme disruptors, but also I would call it the industry leveling up. It's kind of the maturation of the traveler and the maturation of service, both front of house and back of house. I think the staff is probably more sophisticated in most hotels. You got people who might have been in one industry and decided they wanted to go be a chef, and they see being a chef or being a general manager through a very different lens than a guy who or a woman who just went to school and that's all they've ever known. So that's a disruptor, and I think in a good way. So that's what I'm excited about, is that disruption and that sort of I'll call it a renaissance, but that might be a stretch because the things that we're bringing back that were old, we're not bringing it back with the cheapest materials. We're not bringing it back with a Disneyfication, if you will. We're bringing them back right. We're saving wood. We're refinishing old furniture. We're bringing in the new versions of the old stone, and that feels great. And it's expensive, right? But there was just a period, I think, 80s, 90s, and aughts, where it was like, yeah, that looks like marble, and that looks like wood, and that looks like stone, and I always kind of had a problem with that. We all did it, but it kind of hurt my heart a little bit. And so I think we're getting back to a place where those things really, authenticity really matters again, and we push for it. We push for it for sure. So I'm excited about that as well.
That's a beautiful ending of a good predictions, very positive predictions. And like with all the ends of the podcast, there's the magic question. You mentioned Manhattan. So if I take a massive white canvas and place it on top of the Empire State Building, what message would you write in there?
I think I have to say two things. You got me going on this never give up thing. The never give up thing is a big thing. But I think it's never give up, married with, and this is going to sound even cheesier than never give up. I forgot you were going to ask me this question, but it's you're only as old as you feel. I'm 46 this year, and I still feel like early 30s, late 20s. And I feel like I have so much life left to live. So I would love to have something way more profound to tell you, some deep thoughts. But I think if we told the people of the world right now, post pandemic, to never give up, and that you're as old as you feel, I hope you feel good. But yeah, those are, if it's a run-on sentence, if anybody knows me, that's my run-on sentence that I'm putting on the top of your spire on the Empire State Building. I would say, why do we have to do Empire State Building? Why can't we go over to the One World Trade Center and let's put it up there, so it's even higher than all the other ones? But yeah, either way, it's all good.